chosen one, lock your attention on this message right now. That restless feeling you have been carrying all week, the one you cannot explain and cannot shake, that is not anxiety. That is anticipation. The Most High has been setting something in motion on your behalf, and the enemy knows exactly what it is. That is why the pressure has been relentless. That is why the last 72 hours have felt like you were walking through water, every step heavier than it should be, every simple task requiring more strength than you had. Maybe you have been waking up at 3 in the morning this week, not from a nightmare, but from a stillness so loud it feels like something is trying to get your attention. You lie there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, and for a moment you feel it. Something is shifting. Something is close. But then the morning comes and the weight returns and you start to wonder if you imagined it. Or maybe it has been different for you. Maybe you have been going through the motions this week. Work, responsibilities, conversations, and in the middle of completely ordinary moments, something stops you. A thought, a feeling, like you are standing at the edge of something enormous, and you cannot see the bottom, but you cannot turn back either. You feel it, but you cannot name it. And that unnamed feeling has been making the enemy very, very nervous. Because here is what he does not want you to understand. The reason the warfare has been so intense, the reason the confusion has been so thick, the reason your mind has been under siege every single night this week, it is not because something went wrong. It is because something is about to go profoundly, irreversibly right. The enemy does not waste attacks on people who are going nowhere. He does not mobilize everything he has against a life that has nothing coming. The scale of what you have been fighting is a direct reflection of the scale of what heaven has already released on your behalf. He is screaming because he sees what you have not yet been permitted to see. He sees the door, he sees the date, he sees what happens when it opens, and it opens soon. Think back to this week. There was a moment, maybe more than one, when you could have reacted, but you did not. When you could have spoken, but you chose silence. When you could have walked back into something God already closed, and instead you kept walking forward, even though the road ahead looked like nothing. You did not realize it in that moment, but that decision was not weakness. That was not you giving up. That was you in perfect alignment with the strategy heaven already wrote for your life. You were cooperating with something bigger than you understood at the time. That restraint was the final key. You did not find this message by accident. The algorithm did not lead you here. God did. This is a divine appointment that was written into the timeline of your life before you knew you needed it. You are not stumbling onto this. You are arriving exactly on schedule. Stay until the very last word of this message, because in the next few minutes, I am going to hand you the divine verdict that confirms what your spirit has been sensing all week. I'm going to expose the specific lie the enemy has been using to make you doubt the timing of what God set in motion. And at the end, I'm going to give you a declaration, a legal decree you will speak over your own life, that seals this new season and silences every assignment that has been working against your breakthrough. Do not leave. Your future self is on the other side of this message. If you click away right now, you walk away from the confirmation your spirit has been waiting for. I know what the atmosphere has felt like. It has not just been heavy, it has been suspenseful, like the moment between lightning and thunder when everything holds its breath. You have been living in that suspended moment for weeks now, maybe longer. And in that suspension, the enemy has been very busy. He has been whispering a specific lie directly into the place where your faith lives. He has been pointing to the things that have not happened yet, the promises that still look like silence, the prayers that still look unanswered, and he has been building a case. His argument sounds something like this: you have waited too long. You have made too many mistakes. The window has already closed, and whatever was coming for you has been redirected to someone more obedient, someone more consistent, someone who did not stumble the way you stumbled last month. He has been replaying that moment in your mind, that moment when you responded out of fear instead of faith, that moment when you pulled back from something God was asking you to walk toward, that moment when you were not who you wanted to be and you knew it, and you have not been able to let it go since. The accuser is using that moment as evidence. He is building an entire theology around your worst week and presenting it to you as your permanent identity. But I need you to hear what the Word of God actually says about this moment. Jeremiah 29:11 says, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." Listen to that. Not plans that were cancelled, not plans that were redirected, not plans that expired because of what you did in a weak moment. Plans to prosper you, future tense, present tense. His declaration, not a suggestion. A divine blueprint that does not have a revision clause for your humanity. God did not look at that moment the enemy keeps replaying and say the plan is ruined. God looked at that moment and said, "I already accounted for this. You are not behind. You are not disqualified. You are not in a delay caused by your failure. You are in a divine setup." The heaviness you have been carrying is not the weight of punishment. It is the weight of preparation. It is what it feels like when something enormous is being loaded onto the launcher of your life right before it fires. The pressure is not evidence of what went wrong. The pressure is evidence of what is about to go right. That restless feeling you woke up with this morning is not confusion. It is your spirit recognizing that what God set in motion before the foundations of the earth is now within reach of your hands. You are not starting over. You are not going backward. You are not repeating a cycle. You are standing at the finish line of a season that nearly broke you, and what is coming next has been waiting for exactly this moment. The moment you finally stopped trying to fix what God never asked you to repair and simply trusted that He already set this in motion. That is not weakness. That is the most powerful thing a chosen one can do. Some messages confirm what your spirit already knew. If something just shifted inside you, that is not emotion. That is activation. And what comes next matters more than what came before. The inner sanctum exists for exactly this moment in your journey. 365 days of divine transmissions delivered to you every single morning. A prophetic word, a decree of authority, a scripture weapon, and a prayer assignment written as if God is speaking directly to your situation. It also comes with the silent war, a spiritual attack diagnostic that reveals exactly where the enemy has been hitting you and gives you the counter-prayer for each assault. Plus, the Midnight Watch, 30 prayers designed for the 3 a.m. hour that most chosen ones are already waking up to but do not know how to use. The link is in the first pinned comment, but it will not stay there forever. Now let me show you something that the enemy has been working very hard to keep you from seeing, because what he has been attacking is not just your peace, that quiet center within your soul where stillness resides and true rest is found. It is not just your sleep, that sacred sanctuary where the body and spirit are meant to be restored, where weary bones find solace and troubled minds are granted reprieve. It is not just your confidence, that inner conviction, that unwavering belief in your divine purpose and the power God has placed within you to achieve it. No, these are but symptoms, echoes in the peripheral. What he has been targeting with surgical precision, with an almost diabolical accuracy, is your very ability to perceive, to discern, to truly see the season you are in through the unfiltered lens of heaven. He knows that if he can cloud the way you perceive your current season, if he can cast a deceptive shadow over the divine landscape unfolding around you, you will inevitably interpret preparation as punishment. You will look at the crucible of growth, the refining fire designed to burn away dross and reveal pure gold, and you will believe it is a penalty for some unseen trespass. You will interpret positioning, the strategic alignment of your life by the masterful hand of the divine architect, as a cruel rejection, a banishment, a lonely exile to the periphery of what you truly desire. You will read the silence of heaven, that profound stillness that often precedes monumental shifts, as absolute absence, believing you have been forgotten, left adrift in the vast cosmic ocean, when in truth it is actually concentration. God does not go quiet because he has forgotten you, as if the creator of galaxies could misplace one of his beloved children. God goes quiet because he is actively, meticulously, and with unparalleled focus, building something so precise, so specific, so structurally sound, so breathtakingly intricate, that it requires his full, undivided, unyielding attention. And that silence you have been hearing, that profound quietude that has perhaps felt like an empty chasm, is not emptiness at all. It is the deep, resonant, powerful sound of heaven at work on your behalf, the divine gears turning, the celestial blueprint unfolding, the very fabric of creation being woven anew for your destiny. Think about what happens before a birth. There is a deeply profound, almost sacred moment. Every mother, every birthing partner, every soul connected to that impending miracle knows it, where everything suddenly goes exquisitely, intensely still before the final earth-shattering push. The entire body, the very essence of the mother, concentrates every ounce of energy, every fiber of being, on the monumental task at hand. The whole room, previously perhaps filled with nervous chatter or anxious pacing, changes its vibrational frequency. The atmosphere shifts from ordinary to sacred, from mundane to miraculous, in a matter of mere seconds, as if the veil between worlds thins to allow for new life. What you have been living through, what you have been experiencing in this profound season, is not the silence of abandonment, not the desolate quiet of being left behind. No, never. It is the glorious, pregnant silence of imminent arrival, a spiritual gestation period reaching its crescendo, something breathtakingly significant, something long awaited and divinely ordained, is crowning right now in the spirit, pushing against the confines of the unseen realm, ready to burst forth into manifestation. And the enemy, that ancient adversary who stalks the pathways of your destiny, knows it with a chilling certainty, which is precisely why he has been pushing so hard, deploying every tactic, whispering every lie, generating every distraction to get you to walk away from this sacred moment, to retreat in exhaustion or doubt, before you can receive the magnificent reality that has already been prepared and is poised to unfold. But here is where it goes deeper than even that. This isn't just about understanding God's timing, it's about understanding the enemy's strategy. The attacks you have been experiencing, the relentless barrage against your spirit and mind, were not random acts of chaos or unfortunate coincidences. The specific, often insidious nature of what has been hitting you, the perplexing confusion that muddles your thoughts, the false urgency that compels you to rush or make ill-advised decisions, the sudden jarring resurfacing of old wounds you were certain you had diligently buried and healed, the seductive voices that sound so much like authentic wisdom but relentlessly lead you down paths of crushing isolation and self-doubt. Those were not mere coincidences. They were part of a calculated, deliberate pattern. And every pattern, without exception, has a source, an originating intelligence, a strategic mind behind its design. There is an ancient strategic principle, a dark art of spiritual warfare, that the enemy has employed with chilling effectiveness since the very beginning of time, since the garden itself. He does not attack your weakness first, because a direct assault on what is already broken often merely hardens your resolve or prompts you to seek divine intervention. No, his strategy is far more cunning, far more devastatingly effective. He attacks your assignment. He attacks the very point of greatest prophetic potential in your life, the hinge upon which your destiny turns, the nexus where your deepest calling intersects with divine power. He positions his heaviest artillery, his most formidable spiritual weaponry, not at the place where you are already feeling broken, vulnerable, or inadequate. He aims it with deadly precision at the very threshold, the delicate boundary, the point where you are about to break through into a new dimension of purpose and power. Because once you step through that door, once you cross that invisible line of faith and embrace your true identity, he loses access to the version of you that was still doubting, the version of you tethered to fear and uncertainty. And he simply cannot afford to lose that, for it is his most potent weapon against your advancement. A chosen one, truly awakened and fully convinced, who no longer doubts their intrinsic purpose or the divine mandate on their life, is one of the most dangerous, unstoppable forces in the spiritual realm. You transcend mere human limitation. You become a weapon forged in the fires of heaven that cannot be redirected, an assignment from the Creator that cannot be disrupted, a move of God, a living, breathing manifestation of His will, for which He has absolutely no counter. Think of Elijah, the fierce prophet of God, a man whose very name thundered with divine authority. After one of the most thunderous, undeniable demonstrations of divine power in all of Scripture, fire falling from heaven in a spectacular, undeniable blaze, consuming the sacrifice, the wood, the stones, and even the water in the trenches. The prophets of Baal silenced in ignominious defeat, their false gods exposed, and the long-awaited life-giving rain returning to a parched, dry land in response to his fervent prayer, Elijah ran. This spiritual giant, who had just single-handedly stood against 450 prophets of Baal, fled in terror from the threat of a single woman, Jezebel. He retreated into the vast, desolate wilderness, collapsed under the shadow of a broom tree, and in a moment of utter spiritual, emotional, and physical exhaustion, asked God to let him die. He cried out, "It is enough. Now, Lord, take away my life, for I am no better than my ancestors." This was not a man who had failed in his assignment. This was a man who had just won the greatest, most public, most undeniable victory of his prophetic ministry. And yet, in the immediate aftermath of that monumental miracle, at the very precipice of a new season of divine influence, he collapsed under the paralyzing weight of a single, chilling threat. The enemy knows how to use the contrast between recent victory and present pressure to create overwhelming despair. That is the pattern, stark and undeniable. That is precisely what you have been living through, the strategic assault aimed at your breakthrough. The enemy sends his most concentrated, most insidious assault not before your breakthrough, when your spiritual defenses might be at their highest, but immediately after your greatest act of obedience, your most profound leap of faith, or on the very cusp of your most significant divine alignment. He waits until you are standing in that vulnerable yet powerful place where the miracle, the promise, the breakthrough is about to manifest in its full glory. And then he speaks. And what he says, what he whispers into the most vulnerable corners of your mind, sounds so much like logic, so much like reason, so much like sober truth, that you almost believe him. You almost yield to the crushing weight of weariness. You almost sit down under that metaphorical tree, succumbing to the temptation to give up, to retreat, to surrender your assignment. You almost tell God, in the depths of your despair, that you have simply had enough. The journey has been too long, the battles too fierce, the waiting too arduous. But here is what God said to Elijah in that moment, a profound example of divine compassion and strategic provision. He did not rebuke him for his fear or his flight. He did not remind him of his failures, real or perceived. He did not deliver a stern sermon about the necessity of unwavering faith, for he knew Elijah's faith had just moved mountains. Instead, with tenderness and precision, he sent an angel, a messenger of heaven, not with condemnation, but with tangible sustenance, food and water. And the angel's instruction was simple yet profound. Arise and eat, because the journey is too great for you to walk on what you have. God, in his infinite wisdom and perfect understanding, knew that Elijah was not in spiritual failure. He was in a state of profound physical, emotional, and spiritual depletion. He had been carrying something enormous, a prophetic burden of immense weight and responsibility, for far too long without receiving the necessary replenishment, the divine sustaining power required for such a calling. He was not broken in faith, but exhausted in spirit. And what is coming next will likely surprise you, because it always does with God's plans. His ways are higher, his thoughts are deeper than ours. The provision God sent to Elijah was not a reward for his performance. It was not a prize for a job well done. No, it was far more significant than that. It was preparation, a divine refueling, a strategic fortification for what was already waiting for him on the other side of that wilderness, beyond the immediate valley of despair. God said, "Arise and eat," not because Elijah had failed and needed to be remotivated, but precisely because the journey ahead, the next phase of his monumental assignment, required far more than he currently had in his reserves. It was not a consequence of his weakness, but a testament to the magnitude of his future. He needed to be strengthened, not because he was walking away from something bad, but because what he was walking toward was infinitely greater, more expansive, and more glorious than anything he had walked through to get here. The wilderness was not a detour. It was a strategically placed fueling station. You too have been in that wilderness, perhaps for longer than you ever anticipated. You have felt the crushing weight, the profound loneliness, the temptation to give up under that metaphorical tree. And through it all, God has been watching. Not with disappointment in your struggles, not with frustration at your weariness, but with the quiet, precise, unwavering attention of a Father who sees everything, who understands every nuance of your journey, and who knows exactly when to send the angel, exactly when to intervene, and exactly what kind of nourishment, what kind of spiritual sustenance, what specific wisdom to put on the table before you. He sees your heart, not just your performance. The food, the strength, the divine sustenance, the timely insight, the unexpected breakthrough, it is already prepared. The strength you need to not just endure, but to conquer and thrive is already coming, surging towards you from the very throne of grace. And the journey ahead, the glorious new chapter that is about to unfold, is destined to become worth everything, every tear, every battle, every moment of doubt, everything the journey behind you cost. Your investment of endurance is about to yield an unimaginable return. Now, once you truly understand that profound truth, that God's provision is always for your future, not just your past or present, you are ready for this next layer of revelation. Because here is the layer that most people, even many devout believers, never quite reach, never fully apprehend. Most people receive the provision, they eat the bread, they drink the water, they feel renewed, they find comfort, and then they instinctively return to the routine, the familiar rhythms and patterns of the life they already know. They receive renewal, a refreshing, a temporary respite, but they fail to receive the accompanying revelation, the deeper insight, the transformative understanding that was embedded within the provision itself. And tragically, they spend the rest of their season feeling full, feeling better, feeling comforted, but not truly transformed. They've been given a new map, but they've returned to walking their old paths. The renewal God has been sending you this week, those small, unexpected moments of crystal-clear clarity that pierced through the fog of confusion, the surprising, unmerited peace that settled in the midst of overwhelming chaos, the precise scripture that seemed to appear out of nowhere, leaping off the page or out of a conversation at the exact moment you desperately needed it, like a lifeline thrown in a storm. Those were not just random acts of comfort. They were divine coordinates. They were precise navigational points, God calibrating your internal compass, fine-tuning your spiritual GPS for a direction, a pathway, a destiny you have quite literally never walked before. And the reason it has felt unfamiliar, the reason it has perhaps stirred a sense of unease or uncertainty, is not because it is wrong, not because you have veered off course. It is precisely because it is new. And new, by its very nature, always feels like an inherent risk, a leap into the unknown, until it becomes a powerful, undeniable testimony of God's faithfulness, a living testament to His guiding hand. What God is asking you to step into, the magnificent future He has ordained, does not, and indeed should not, look like what came before. It cannot be confined by your past experiences or your previous understanding. You have been unconsciously trying to measure your future, to assess its dimensions and possibilities, using the limited ruler of your past, the metrics of your old season, and it simply does not fit. The dimensions are profoundly different. The ceiling of your potential is immeasurably higher. The territory of your influence and impact is infinitely wider. The calling upon your life is dramatically deeper, resonating with a greater echo of eternity. And the you that bravely walked through the last season, the one forged in those fires, is not and cannot be the same you that is standing at the glorious entrance of this new one. That fundamental shift, that radical transformation in your being, is not a problem that needs fixing. On the contrary, that is precisely the point. That is the miraculous alchemy of God's redemptive work in your life. Stay with me now, because what comes next is the profound revelation, the spiritual key that breaks the cycle, that unlocks the acceleration. There is a specific, often unspoken agreement you have been living under, a subtle covenant forged in the quiet chambers of your heart that has had more pervasive influence over your divine timeline than anything the enemy has ever done externally. And it is this: somewhere along the arduous way, perhaps through a profound disappointment that cut too deep, leaving a wound in your expectation, through a cherished promise that did not come to pass in the exact way you expected or at the time you had meticulously planned, through a season of waiting that stretched on for so long, so relentlessly, that waiting itself, the posture of suspended animation, began to subtly, insidiously become your primary identity. You stopped expecting Sue Denley. You unconsciously shifted your paradigm. You started preparing for the gradual, conditioning your soul for incremental progress rather than divine intervention. You started managing your hope, meticulously rationing it out in small measured doses instead of releasing it fully, wildly, without reservation, as a powerful force in the spiritual realm. You became incredibly proficient, very good, at trusting God for the incremental, for the slow, steady build. But you became deeply guarded, fiercely protective, almost resistant, about believing for the immediate, for the instantaneous, for the sudden, miraculous breakthrough. And in a very human, understandable way, it made perfect sense. It was a protective mechanism, a survival strategy. After enduring enough cycles of fervent anticipation, followed by crushing delay, of outstretched hope met with what felt like divine silence, the human soul learns, out of sheer self-preservation, to stay low to the ground, to temper its soaring expectations, to avoid the painful, jarring fall that comes with unmet desires. That, in its essence, is not necessarily faithlessness in the purest sense. It is a deeply ingrained survival response to spiritual disappointment, a scar tissue forming over a wound of the soul. But here is what that subtle agreement does, often without you even realizing the profound impact it is having. It functions precisely like a governor on a powerful engine. It doesn't stop the vehicle from moving forward entirely. The divine momentum is still there. It just mercilessly limits the speed, holding back the full potential. The inherent power is still there within you. The divine fuel, the anointing, is abundantly present. The glorious destination, your God-given destiny, is clearly programmed into the GPS of heaven. But the silent, subtle agreement you made in that place of profound disappointment, that covenant with gradualism, inadvertently set an invisible ceiling on how fast the miracle could move, how quickly the promise could manifest. And you have been living under that self-imposed ceiling for so long, so consistently, that you started calling it the roof, believing it to be the unchangeable, unyielding limit of your reality. God is not asking you to pretend that the disappointment never happened, to gloss over the pain or ignore the scars. He is certainly not asking you to manufacture fake, artificial excitement, a hollow pretense of joy that doesn't resonate with your spirit. He is asking you to do something far more dangerous to the enemy's kingdom, far more radical and infinitely more powerful than that. He is asking you to let your expectation become as vividly specific, as meticulously detailed, as the prayer you first poured out from the deepest chambers of your heart. Not hoping vaguely that things will generally get better, that the tide will somehow eventually turn. No, this is different. He is asking you to expect specifically, with a burning, unwavering clarity, that what he said, what he promised, what he imprinted upon your spirit, will arrive, not partially, not diluted, but in its absolute fullness, in its pristine clarity, in the complete and perfectly finished form he intended when he first spoke it as a creative decree over your precious life. Because the promises of God are not approximate estimations, vague probabilities, or loose suggestions. They are exact, they are precise, they are definitive, and they are coming, not with a gentle breeze, but with the full, undeniable, irresistible weight of heaven behind them, an unstoppable force of divine fulfillment. But let me challenge you now with something that cuts even closer, something that penetrates deeper into the hidden places of your heart than anything I have said so far. Prepare yourself, for this is a truth that requires courage to confront. The real barrier, the ultimate impediment to your breakthrough, has not actually been the enemy, despite his relentless assaults. The real barrier has not ultimately been the profound disappointment that wounded your spirit and tempered your hope, though its impact was undeniably significant. And here is the part, the uncomfortable truth, that you probably did not expect to hear tonight, the revelation that demands a brutal honesty with oneself. The real, most stubborn barrier has been the version of you that was, in a quiet, almost imperceptible way, more comfortable waiting for what God promised, more accustomed to the posture of longing than actually receiving it fully and without reservation. Because receiving true, uninhibited reception of a monumental blessing requires you to become something fundamentally different. It demands a transformation. Receiving requires you to step boldly into an identity that might, at first, feel too large, too grand, too weighty for the familiar person you have been performing as, the comfortable persona you have presented to the world. Receiving requires you to stop being the one who is almost there, the perpetual seeker, the one forever on the cusp, and to definitively, unequivocally start being the one who has arrived, who has claimed their inheritance, who is actively living in the fullness of their purpose. And something within you, perhaps a subconscious fear, a deep-seated resistance to change, or an attachment to the familiar, has been subtly, persistently resisting that magnificent transition. Not because you do not genuinely desire the blessing, not because you don't long for its manifestation, but because the blessing, in its full, unadulterated form, comes with an inherent authority that demands accountability. It comes with a profound visibility that irrevocably removes the false safety of comfortable obscurity. It comes with a vast responsibility that means you can no longer afford the luxury of smallness, of playing it safe, of shrinking from your true potential. You have been calling it humility, that quiet retraction, that reluctance to fully step forward. You have perhaps rationalized it as spiritual modesty, a proper posture of deference. But God, in His perfect, clear-sighted wisdom, has been calling it delay. A delay not of His making, but of your choosing. A pause in your progression, born of an internal resistance to the glorious enormity of your destiny. And this, my beloved chosen one, is the profound confrontation that heaven has been building toward throughout this entire message. This is the moment of truth. You are not waiting on God as if He is somehow lagging behind, holding back, or needing to be persuaded. God has been waiting on you, not impatiently, not with frustration, as a human parent might, but with the quiet, unrelenting certainty, the serene confidence of a father who knows that his child has everything they need, every gift, every capacity, every divine empowerment, and is standing just outside the threshold of what was always, always theirs. Not because the door is locked and impassable, but because stepping through it means they can never again authentically pretend they did not know who they truly were, what they were truly called to do, or the immense power residing within them. That pretense, that convenient ignorance, becomes impossible once you cross the threshold of your true identity. The door, the entryway to your magnificent destiny, is open. It has been open. And the only thing that has been, in truth, between you and the profound reality, the glorious inheritance, the unstoppable momentum that awaits on the other side, is your willingness to release the person the waiting made you, the weary, the doubtful, the hesitant, the small, and courageously become the person the blessing unequivocally requires. This is not about earning, it's about embodying that monumental shift, that single, seismic, life-altering decision to fully and unreservedly agree with what heaven has already eternally declared over your precious, anointed life. Is not something that happens gradually, incrementally, over an extended period. It happens in a moment. It happens in a breath. It can happen right now, in this very instant, as these words land with divine precision in the deepest, most receptive place where you live. This is your Kairos moment. You are not going to ease into your calling, tiptoeing gingerly into its vastness. You are going to step into it, fully, completely, with everything you are in this very moment, and with everything you have not yet even imagined yourself to become, because that, my friend, is what the chosen carry. Not the naive certainty that they have every detail figured out, that every question has been answered, that every step is meticulously planned, but rather the consecrated decision, the holy resolve to walk forward anyway, knowing with an unshakable inner conviction that the one who called them, the Creator of all things, is more than sufficient, more than capable, more than powerful enough to complete, to perfect, to bring to glorious fruition everything He started in them and through them. Place your hand on your chest, over your heart, and speak this over yourself right now, not as a mere performance for an audience, not as an empty ritual or a hollow incantation, but as a potent, binding, legal declaration in the courtroom of heaven, in the very presence of the Most High, where every single word you speak with true conviction carries immense binding authority over your own life, over your circumstances, and over your future. I break every agreement I have made with delay. I renounce the insidious lie that the window of opportunity has closed, that I have been disqualified by my past, that my failures or perceived shortcomings have in any way redirected or derailed what God, in His infinite wisdom and perfect love, originally set in motion for me. I declare with every fiber of my being that the promises of God over my life are not approximate. They are exact, they are active, they are currently in motion, and they are arriving in their absolute fullness. I consciously, decisively release the identity of the one who is perpetually waiting, and I boldly step into the identity of the one who has already received. I am not behind schedule. I am not broken beyond repair. I am not doomed to repeat a painful cycle. I am standing, by divine appointment, at the very threshold of the season that everything in my unique, miraculous story has been strategically building toward. The pressure I have been feeling, that intense, unyielding weight, is not punishment. It is sacred preparation. The silence I have been hearing, that profound, sometimes unsettling quiet, is not absence or abandonment. It is divine concentration. And I am walking through this door, not because I feel entirely ready in my own strength, but because the one who made me, the one who called me, the one who thoroughly equipped me, is already on the other side, waiting to usher me in. I am chosen. I am appointed. I am aligned. And what God Himself has written over my life, etched into the very fabric of my being, cannot be erased, cannot be redirected, and cannot be delayed by anything that was never authorized in the first place to stop it. This is my season. This is my moment, and I receive it fully, completely, without reservation, in the name that is above every other name, right now. It is done. It has already been done in the spiritual realm, waiting for your agreement to manifest it here. And if this word confirmed something your spirit has been carrying, do not leave this moment without going deeper. The link in the first pinned comment connects you to something that was built for exactly where you are standing right now. It is called the Inner Sanctum. Every morning for 365 days, you will receive a direct transmission, a prophetic word, a decree, a scripture weapon, and a prayer assignment written as if God is speaking directly into your specific season. It also includes the Silent War, a spiritual attack diagnostic that identifies exactly where the enemy has been hitting you and hands you the counter prayer for each assault. And it includes the Midnight Watch, 30 prayers crafted for the 3 a.m. moment that most chosen ones are already waking up to, but have never been equipped to use. The link will not stay there forever. When you are ready to stop waiting and start walking, it is there. Go now.